Hello everybody. Today I'm going to update on my cat's heart condition. We recently had a follow-up where the news was mostly on track. He was doing okay, but there was one development that is a serious development, but it wasn't definitively negative. So I'm going to discuss a little bit of that in a second. Two disclaimers I want to offer up front. This is my own personal experience. It's not an advice video. If you find something in this video might be applicable to a situation that you have with your pet or something, please discuss with your veterinarian first before you take anything from this video and employ it in your own situation. The second disclaimer is that in this video I'm going to be talking about issues surrounding veterinary medical care, specifically feline constipation related to dehydration caused by diuretics and some stuff surrounding that like diet and whatnot. If talking about those kinds of veterinary medical issues and other medical issues relating to veterinary medical care are things that you don't like to hear about, then this video is not for you. So please, click stop or go to another video. I never thought I'd hear myself saying that on a YouTube video. Okay, so with those two disclaimers out of the way, let's get on with the video. So my cat Ricochet has HOCM, which stands for Hypertrophic Obstructive Cardiomyopathy. The better known variation of that is just simply HCM, which is Hypertrophic Cardiomyopathy. My cat Ricochet has the obstructive variant of HCM, so it's called HOCM for Hypertrophic Obstructive Cardiomyopathy. Putting all of that stuff aside, you can listen to my other video where I explain a little bit about what that is, and there's even some really good veterinary videos on the YouTube here and on the web that you can really get some more information about that. But the short version is my cat has a heart disease where his heart over time has more difficulty pumping blood. And that's because it starts to enlarge. And this is like a genetic thing that many cats actually get. It's not something unheard of by any stretch. And basically what happens is it's one of those diseases that doesn't have a cure, and really it has management. And the management comes in a lot of different ways, but the way that is most significant that I know of is with medications that actually, and I'm just saying this really quickly, you can listen to the other videos if you want to know more, but the short version is there's some medications that basically dehydrate his system to some degree as a way of alleviating the work that the heart has to go through, as well as the pressure and stuff that exists in relation to what the heart has to do. And I'm not a veterinary cardiologist, so I'm not an expert in all that, but that's just like the short version. So what this means is my cat Ricochet has to take diuretics, which are medications that will dehydrate him to some degree. The problem with that is diuretics work against the kidneys, and one of my veterinarians explained it to me kind of simply, that it's sort of this battle that is between the heart and the kidneys. Both are critical, but the heart gets a little prioritized here, and it puts some weight, if you will, or damage. Not damage outright, but it's harder on the kidneys. And over time, this battle can become more and more difficult to manage, because what you're trying to do is dehydrate the cat as a way of dealing with the heart disease so that the heart doesn't have to do the same kind of work and that the pressure is not as great and all that kind of stuff. But that has an adverse effect on the kidneys, and over time this can become a very tricky battle. Another side effect of diuretics is that dehydration can lead to constipation. So if a cat does not have moisture to essentially lubricate the waste that has to travel through the cat, the cat's colon or whatever they call it with a cat, it creates a situation where there can be blockage there, and it can be quite severe to the point where you have to go to the emergency room. In fact, I've gone to the emergency room several times with Ricochet, and they actually give him an enema there, and all this stuff comes out and everything like that. It's something that's very scary for him when it happens. Like what can happen is out of nowhere, he can all of a sudden feel this really huge pain, and when I've seen it happen to him, he'll be playing 1 minute and all of a sudden he'll just go down on all fours as if he's really frightened of something, and then all of a sudden he'll just be sitting there for a while and he'll like yowl and something will come out, you know, and sometimes that happens and nothing comes out right away. So that's when it's really chronic and we have to go and get an enema and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so in my last video that I made on this, I sort of came around to an interesting approach with diet stuff where I found this food which was not necessarily the highest protein sort of raw diet that you would typically hear recommended for a cat, and so that was, you know, at first I was a little bit hesitant to go that direction, but it was a hairball remedy, kibble, which my cat really loved, and it has worked well for him and his, you know, ability to pass stool and all that kind of stuff. So basically, he has not had to go to the emergency room once since that last time all that happened, and that's all been really, really good. We also noticed over time that he had a blood clot which diminished to be quite small. Based on the use of Xarelto, which is a medication that helps break down blood clots slowly over time. And this medication is not foolproof. There's a couple different medications veterinary cardiologists tend to use, and none of them are necessarily foolproof for all cats or all cat situations, but they are used and do have some level of success with certain cats, you know, and I don't know what does it, if it's genetics or diet or whatnot, and I'm actually going to talk a little bit more about this in a bit. So anyway, several weeks ago, we had a follow-up scheduled at the veterinary cardiologist for Ricochet, and we went there, and all of his things checked out fine. His breathing rate is phenomenal. He's like in the mid-20s, sometimes a little lower than that. Sometimes it goes up to about 26, 28, but that's, you know, rare, and usually that's if it's hot weather or maybe he's dreaming while he's sleeping or something like that. But I mostly catch it at 25 or, you know, less beats breaths per minute, and that's actually a really positive thing. So all those kinds of things are good. The blood's looking good, etc., etc. However, there was a negative finding at his follow-up, and that is I think they used the echocardiogram or the device that lets them see into my cat's heart. And the purpose of this was to look to see how the blood clot was doing. Was the Xarelto still working to reduce the clot, or was it, you know, not doing well or whatever? So what they saw is that the clot had increased about a centimeter in size. So Ricochet just had this follow-up that I'm talking about now where we found out about the clot increase in size. He had that on August 21st. The last recheck he had was in June. It was June 19th. So on that June 19th recheck, his blood clot size was approximately 0.8 centimeters by 0.6 centimeters. So we just had another recheck 2 months after that. That was the one on August 21st that I'm talking about now. And his blood clot had increased in size, and I would say almost twice the size. So as of that August 21st recheck date, his blood clot size is now 1.9 centimeters by about 1.5 centimeters. So that's kind of a significant increase for a 2-month period. I was puzzled by that because the Xarelto was working prior, so I was trying to think through what had changed. And the only thing that I can think of that's changed is diet. And, you know, diet is a thing that can affect human beings with, you know, clogging and things like that. So I am suspicious myself that the diet change may well have something in it that is just not the best thing when it comes to mitigating blood clots in a patient like Ricochet with HOCM the way he has that. So I talked to the doctor about this like at length because the doctor has another option to switch from Xarelto to this other kind of medication they use, which is kind of like apparently it's like a needle prick type thing like what insulin patients use, and I would do that twice a day or something. And I am fine with switching paths here, but my concern was giving up on Xarelto if something else had changed. So I talked with the doctor about whether or not we could try the new meds and then maybe come back and try Xarelto, and I talked about a whole lot of things. See, here's the thing. The doctor has no data on why this may work or not work, and he can't confirm to me whether it's diet or anything. doctors, medical doctors as well as veterinary doctors, they are really limited to, giving information that they know has been scientifically proven, and there's good reasons for that. So they have to be careful when they extend themselves to approving for, care things that are outside the realm of known things. And I mean, I think this just goes to say veterinarians, they have to, deal with the studies and things that they have, and there's just no information available. So my veterinarian, the veterinary cardiologist, can't say anything about why the blood clot increased, why the Xarelto isn't effective anymore. He knows that there's cases where it works. Sometimes it will work well, sometimes it will work for a little while and then stop working. There's all sorts of cases that he's heard of, but there's not enough repetition in the data there to have any strong information. That's the gist that I understand. I'm not a doctor, so I don't have the inside scoop, but that's kind of the surface as I understand it. And so we talked at length about this on that August 21st visit, because I was kind of going back and forth between maybe switching and this and that, but I really felt like I wanted to try to see what had changed here because nothing else had changed and he had been doing well. So diet was the only thing. It was just sticking out like a sore thumb. And I thought to myself that I might switch back to my cat's other kibble, which, doesn't have the greatest sodium level in it, but it's higher quality, I believe, from a protein perspective and a grain perspective than the hairball treatment. I actually haven't done an analysis on it. I've been very happy with that hairball treatment because it's really helped my cat, have good number twos and all that kind of stuff. But, we're stuck with this dilemma. That clot growing is very dangerous. So basically I want to have that thing reduced down if I can, if I can do something there. I'm not sure what I'll be able to do, but it'd be nice to be able to do something. So there's an aspect that I want to share about my story here with Ricochet that is important to understand in order to understand the rest of this particular part of the discussion. So my cat Ricochet did have one episode where he was experiencing some constipation even on the new diet. And I was at home with him, and all of a sudden I could see like he was in that thing where he gets in pain and he goes onto the floor and just sits there until he yowls, and then like he goes, and it's not like it's a very scary thing to be around, because as a pet owner, there's like nothing you can do. You got to kind of work with him. I can take him to the emergency center. That can be kind of traumatic for him. And at this point, I've done that enough. And I've actually read online as part of preparing in case I had to do an at-home enema on my cat, because I don't have the medical enemas. But they say that you can use warm water and stuff like that, but I've been really remiss to do that. It's like I've gone pretty much to the vets to do that kind of thing, and I didn't know if I'd be able to do it at home. So on this night when he started having constipation again, what happened is I decided I'm not going to take him to the emergency room. I mean, we end up going there. It's really, really expensive. I did not have the funds for it. Usually we go there and they can't just jump in and do an enema. They'll have to do like radiographs and all these things, and it just adds up. It just gets really expensive to do that. And at the time, I actually, I couldn't afford it really. I had been looking in a job search and all this kind of stuff, so I had to be really careful with my P's and Q's. So I decided to go out and go to the drugstore to look for an enema that would actually work on a cat, something small and that would maybe work. Now I couldn't find anything like that in the local stores here, except what I was able to find is these ear flushing kind of devices. So basically this is it. It's an ear syringe. And I guess you use it to wash the ear typically, but it actually has a pretty small tip like that. And it had the right amount of milliliters in here that it could hold of water for the prescriptions that I read about using warm water with a cat. And they didn't really cost that much. And basically what I did is I filled this with warm water. Ricochet, as he is with all of his care and everything, was totally cool with it. I mean, it was a little bit like he wanted to be done with it already. I also made sure to be very careful not to go too far with this. My goal was just simply to get some warm water into his area there, not, the vet, when they do this, they have this special equipment that can go really far in further. And I didn't want to do anything like that. I don't even have the equipment to do that. So basically this is what I use, but I made sure to not go too far because you can see it gets really wide here, and that would not be too comfortable. So basically what I did is I was able to use warm water, and I went in maybe about a half an inch or so. I did this about 2 times. It was 2 times I did it pretty quickly right next to one another. He walked around for about 3 minutes or so, went right in the litter box, and a whole bunch of stuff came out. So when that happened on that night, I am telling you, it wasn't great that this occurred, that he went into that situation, but the fact that we solved it on our own with a little piece of equipment like this and some warm water, not to sound like it's all about money or something, but it was a huge cost savings. But think about it from his perspective. He didn't have to be dragged in the carrier in the car down to the vet, and it's just, that's a whole stressful thing to do that. Never ever use a human-grade enema on cats. It is very dangerous. Always consult your vet before doing any sort of at-home treatment like this. So from that experience, what happened was I realized even on his new diet, while things had improved drastically, it was not 100% foolproof. But what I really liked about that whole incident and how he handled it is all of a sudden I felt empowered as a pet owner to manage the constipation at home with warm water if I need to do that. And I read online that if you're not doing it more than like every 3 days or something like that, that it's okay. And if it's more than that, then see your vet. So my veterinary cardiologist knew about this whole event and everything like that. And so when I had that August 21st visit where he told me that the clot had increased and we were talking about all this, I said, hey, what if I go back to his old diet, which might have too much sodium, but it's higher in quality, and we didn't have this issue with Xarelto when he was on that kibble. So why don't I go and try shifting back to that as one thing I can do? And if he gets constipated because the sodium is too high, I have the ability at home, to deal with that if I have to. And so we'll just use that as a way of moving forward, going kind of back to his old diet. And the other thing I added is I wanted to increase Ricochet's play at home. He likes to ask me to play now and then. He doesn't play as much anymore now that the heart condition has progressed, but he does like to play a little bit. And so I felt like some activity would be helpful for him as well. Not extraneous or stressful activity, but just moving around a little more. He's here most of the time, and I think being indoors for a cat like him, we think it's like a paradise, but I think cats, they're meant to run around and have space and climb up things and stuff. And he has a lot of places he can run around in here. For a cat, he's got a pretty good setup. And that's the point I'm trying to make, is despite the good setup and despite that he kind of has the whole area for himself, he doesn't share it with another cat, which is like another discussion I could have. There's a whole balance there. Is it good for him to be alone, or would he be more stimulated with another cat? And that's been a whole battle with me, because in my mind I'm thinking 2 cats in here might be too small. So you see, there's a lot of considerations here, but the point I was trying to make before is, even though Ricochet does have a good setup here and he has lots of space and ramps and trees and everything, I actually don't think that's enough, I gotta tell you. And that sounds silly, I know, but I'm just saying from an animal perspective, if I look at it from his perspective as a cat, in the wild, he would be roaming much more space. Even if it wouldn't be as significant as a big lion, even these smaller cats, they like their space. They like to wander around and get that activity. So the vet can't really tell me anything, as I mentioned, unless he's got the science on it, right? So he actually just can only tell me the clot size increased, and he can only tell me there's an option of another medication. And that's all he can offer me. And then everything else is up to me. So the one parameter that he offered as a restriction is that if we switched off the Xarelto onto this other medication, this like insulin-like injection thing, it's not insulin, but it's a similar kind of technique used to inject some kind of heart medication that breaks down clots. And it, like Xarelto, is not a proven thing, so we don't even know if that would work with Ricochet. But he said if we switch off of Xarelto and go on to this other one, he doesn't want to flip back and go to Xarelto because we spent time building up the Xarelto and all this kind of stuff. So I decided let's go one more month on the Xarelto, and I'm going to go back to Ricochet's old kibble. Along with that, his sodium intake is going to increase, but he'll be eating higher quality food. And I'll be prepared to do an at-home warm enema if he exhibits constipation. So far it's been great. We've been doing this since a couple weeks now, and he's been fine, so fingers crossed. And I think now he's starting to develop a connection between this notion of taking in water and having comfort with like his number twos and the whole bowel processing and everything. I can't verify that, but it seems like there might be something like that going on, and they're very good at picking up patterns. You know, it's like when they get trained how to do something or whatnot, or even when they're learning how to survive in an environment, they do a lot of sort of pattern kind of understanding type stuff, right? Seeing things go on and learning how it works and then kind of integrating into the environment. And so I think he's sort of getting a notion that drinking water is somehow good for his, processing of that. And I always tell him, good boy, when he drinks his water. And when he goes number two, I say good boy as well there too. And I think all that positive reinforcement makes him just really happy to be doing all those things and stuff. And so far we haven't had to do anything at home like that, except for that one incident like probably about a month ago, and that was before his last cardiology visit. That's the thing I just mentioned a second ago. And basically I've talked to two veterinarians, my veterinary cardiologist and my cat's regular veterinarian, and they're both on board with it. They know there's no other things that are known scientifically at this point. So here's an interesting thing. After that veterinary cardiology visit, once we discussed the new plan and everything, I came home and decided to search around on YouTube for other videos on blood clotting and things like that, and HCM, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, the illness that my cat has, the obstructive variant is what he has. But I just looked at all the videos and stuff, and I stumbled across this one veterinarian who has a video on these heart conditions and how she approaches treatment with her patients. And it was very enlightening in a certain way, but it's not something I can validate one way or another yet at this point. But I found it to be sort of supportive of the path that I chose. Now, I will link that video down in my description down here. I have no affiliation with that veterinarian or that video or whatnot, but it's something that I actually found when coming home, really trying to look for answers about this in some way. There's actually a lot of interesting information in that video, but there's this one thing that actually stood out to me and it resonated really strongly. This veterinarian says that diet plays a huge role in how this disease develops and whatnot. And I really, I don't have the evidence for that right now, but it sounded right, what I was hearing from this veterinarian. And it made me feel that, that there's a chance that improving diet along with these other meds may be necessary to have it all working well together. I also looked at some YouTube videos on blood clotting, and blood clotting is kind of an interesting thing because essentially I guess it's connected with what I think is the coagulation or whatever that is that occurs when you get a cut and it seals the cut. The blood works to seal the cut, and apparently there's some chemical reactions that can go on with blood where it thinks there's a wound and it needs to seal it up. And apparently this goes on with blood clots with cats. And I think what happens is when this heart condition develops, there can be these pools of blood that sort of swim around or swirl around within the chambers of the heart. And I believe that what happens is there's something about the nature of that and the weakening ability of the heart to pump blood in a healthy manner, which creates some sort of reaction in the blood in these areas near the valves and stuff that I guess build up clots that start to develop. I don't really know much more about it than that sort of high-level layperson's kind of explanation that's based on probably my weak interpretation of the videos I've seen. I'm just not a doctor and I'm not a cardiologist, but the short of it is blood is cells. Blood are cells, right? They they're cells, and they have properties, and these things interact with things, and apparently clots are connected with the stuff that's supposed to be good when we get cut, and it seals up the wound. So you can imagine, well, something is building up where it doesn't need to be because the blood is trying to seal a wound which doesn't exist, and it's trying to do that in a way that's going to be dangerous if that breaks off or pieces of it break off. I think I've got that right, but I'm just not an expert on this area. But I don't know about you, but to me, when I hear that and I kind of start to build this picture in my mind of how this might be functioning, how clots might function, and I hear another vet talking about diet connection to clotting, when I start considering all this, I'm just thinking of that old kind of saying, you are what you eat, And we know that diet can affect clotting in human beings and arteries and things like that. And I know cats, I've heard that they're different, in some areas. But what I really feel here is that there is a really good chance that clotting that goes on in this manner within the heart of a cat or near the area of the heart like this, that the way that this happens, it seems like it's connected with cells and tissue that are all being fed by what you take in. And it seems quite plausible to me that the mixture of the medications and the properties they exhibit to break down clots, coupled with the other medications you're taking in, which is the food, right? Because food is really sort of a medication, right? It's not like in a sense that how we use the English language, right? These are just symbolic words, right? So if we get rid of all the symbols and stop calling food food and medicines medicines, and we just say, well, you take stuff in and it does something to you, right? Okay, so you're taking meds in, right? And you're taking food in. And this is all going in, and it's doing something to your body. And hopefully meds do the good things you want them to do, and food fills you up and gives you energy. But, food just doesn't necessarily taste good, and you fill your stomach, and then that's the end of what the purpose of food is. You ingest food, and it actually starts doing something positive in your life. It starts feeding, your tissue, and all kinds of wonderful things go on that are just beyond my scope here. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, from a very simple common sense standpoint, if you take in food and it can affect your body, and if you can take in medications that can break down clots and it can affect the clots, then anything you take in can play a role in what's going on in this picture here. So I feel like there might be a chance that changing diet or augmenting aspects of the diet might decrease the clotting potential. And I just don't have any science on that right now, but this veterinarian talks about some things relating to that. I don't know for sure if I've got it right from that other video, but I got the feeling that a lot of the things that she mentioned might have to do with when you catch the illness early. I'm not sure what this person would say about dealing with it at this point where we're already in congestive heart failure, not visibly, but technically we are in that phase, and it's this far along. I sort of feel like this vet might agree that changing diet might be better than not. I don't know if anybody would say it would be a definitive fix. And I just don't know. I'm a lay person, and when there's no science that's out there and going to all the veterinarians and all the veterinary cardiologists, most of the doctors might have their own nuanced information. Some of it may not be proven, but they might see positive things in their practice about it. And I don't really know how to process all that information, because I come from a background where, if the doctors say it, then that's the thing you want to go with and stuff. And that's not always the thing you want to do. Sometimes you have to do your own thing, But I kind of like to follow those programs to some extent. And at the same time, though, I am wising up in my years to realize that sometimes you have to take things into your own hands when it comes to things like diet and stuff like that. I think diet's a very powerful thing for human beings and animals in terms of well-being in so many different areas. So anyway, I'm rambling on, but the short of it is, I don't know what to do to help my cat's clot at this point, and it's a very scary thing because clot's getting bigger, it's not a good thing. And if some of that breaks off, it could lead to a really heavy-duty negative episode for my cat. So it's kind of a little bit of a scary time, but it's one that is not hopeless at this point. And so I'm trying some things, and I think I'm just putting that out there, not only to share what I've kind of gone through with this. If you're going through a similar thing, maybe you can use this to talk to your vet, and maybe you'll find something out. If anybody out there has any information and you have some thoughts on this, feel free to, leave a comment down there. It'd be nice to hear your thoughts on this. And of course, I will update as I find out things. All right, that's it. Thank you guys very much. Have a wonderful weekend or week or whatever happens to be for you. And catch you on the next video. All right, thanks. Bye.